Hello everyone, welcome back to Tales from the Dark. Sorry I've been on a long hiatus from my channel, but just like everyone worldwide, I've been dealing with this whole COVID crisis also. Before I get started, I hope that everyone is in good health and staying strong out there. From high passes, forlorn tundra, trackless, primeval woodlands. It is within these desolate places that one is most likely to encounter a Wendigo, an evil creature that preys on explorers and hunters when resources are running low and true desperation is setting in. While the flesh-eating beasts of nature might simply assault unwary victims head-on, the Wendigo is a horror that turns the hunter into the hunted. These are 4 true encounters with a Wendigo. With that being said, let's get into it. Number 1. An ex-girlfriend of mine used to live on this small rural island in Minnesota called Gray Cloud Island. At one point, the island had the highest concentration of Indian burial mounds in the county. There is a lot of history there, and it at one time was considered sacred. I'm sure you all know how that went. At any rate, across the street from my ex's mailbox was a long, overgrown gravel driveway blocked off by a rusty chain. On one of our late-night jaunts, we decided to step over the chain and make our way down this driveway, which was a good quarter of a mile long, if not more. The driveway opened up into a small clearing of sorts, in the center of which was all that remained of a home's foundation. Then, little more than a rectangular patch of concrete. The trees which ringed the clearing were sparse in some places, thicker in others. But even so, we could see a lot of the ground beyond the clearing. Grassy, humped ground, trees, nothing else. The ex had a blanket which she spread out on the patch of concrete. We laid down together and talked for some space, the while listening to the chirp of the crickets. Dusk had just crept in, and we were still lying there when she heard movement in the woods nearby, the furtive crackle of branches and crunching leaves. It was very close, much too close for comfort. From the sound of it, it was no more than 20 yards away. Surely we would have heard its approach from a ways off. After all, sound has a tendency to carry in the woods. We got up by mutual, unspoken agreement and, in the dark, made our hasty but careful way to the driveway. The sound of something approaching from the woods changed. It was now in the clearing where we had been only moments before. As shit scared as ever I've been, I broke into a run, which was immediately halted by my girlfriend at the time, who urgently whispered, "Don't run. It provokes chase." I did as she bade, and, together, in silence, we moved back down the driveway, moved as fast as we could without actually running. By the time we got to the street, the sounds were gone. "What do you think that was?" I asked her. "I don't want to talk about it," she said, completely stone-faced. By the way, she was 100% Native American. I knew she knew more than she let on. but regardless of how much I pried, she never told me what that was. To this day, I still wonder.
Number 2.
I used to live in the Rocky Mountains as a kid with my dad. He was a bushcraft teacher who helped train people to survive in the Rocky Mountains and would often take me on camping trips. When I was 8, my dad took me on one particular camping trip that I remember strongly to this day. By the way, I'm 34 now. It's important to note that we used to hunt for food on many of these camping trips we took together. This time was no different, and the first thing me and my dad did was begin tracking a deer. We managed to catch up with a small group of maybe 5 or 6 deer at a clearing. My dad raised his rifle, not at the group of deer, but at another deer that had just entered the clearing. But it wasn't a deer. It was walking on 2 legs, and it might have had the head of a deer with horns, but it was twisted and misshapen. And the eyes. Damn those red eyes. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My dad fired 3 shots at this thing before dragging me away from it. We ran harder and faster than I ever remember running, straight to the vehicle my dad drove us here in. We didn't even return to the camp we'd set up. Later, my dad did end up returning to the campsite to find that someone, or more like something, had been rummaging through it. He hasn't spoken about it since, and neither of us has ever been up to that part of the mountains again.
Number 3.
The following account is 100% truthful and took place at around 3 a.m. on October 31st, 2020. My friends and I always go on walks together past midnight, in the woods, along the roads, anything and everywhere. We usually have 4 people, but this time, the guy whose house we were staying at could have 6 people over. So the 6 of us walked along the road to this horizon tower on this hill. The stars looked very nice up there at night, so we always do it. We get halfway up the hill, and we're feeling uneasy. It's a full moon on Halloween after all. Nick, the oldest of us and most stoic, points his flashlight ahead on the trail and says,
What the f*** is that?
He rarely swears, so this was another attention-grabbing thing. We all stop and look ahead. About 20 paces ahead of us, there it was. 8 feet tall, white as snow. A skin and bone, lanky, bipedal being within a stone's throw. 6 people all saw this at the same time. It takes off into the woods at superhuman speed. We stop and are silent for a moment. We immediately start asking if everyone saw it, and yes, everyone did. We argue and cuss, and I try my hardest to convince the others to turn back and just forget about it. But of course, fearless Ben, who doesn't believe in anything like that, begs to push on. And we do. Now, I've cut down a lot of trees in my day, so I know what it sounds like when one falls. On the continuation of our voyage, less than a minute later, a tree slams to the ground on the side of the trail. It didn't fall. It was like it was pulled down with some force. Again, we stop and argue. We push on. A minute after that, we hear a rustle and a loud, painful chirp from a bird, like it was being hurt. We finally made it to the tower and look around us. The top of the hill is mostly devoid of trees, so we look down at the path where it ran. Ben is still trying to convince us that he isn't afraid, but we all know better. We decide to run the half-mile back down to his house. We get there, and Ben starts crying. He has never, ever believed in anything his whole life like that. But he saw something up there. We all did. I still see it sometimes when I close my eyes. We've gone back up there, but we haven't seen anything again. I've done a lot of research into it, and there is no doubt in my mind that what we saw was a Wendigo.
Number 4.
I was out camping with 2 of my buddies who I had grown up with in a long stretch of forest north of New York. There were so many rumors of an old haunted house where people disappeared or some shit like that. We would go to the forest all the time to test our mettle, like the dumb kids we were. This one time, we were camping down by the river with a fire going, trying to scare each other. We kept telling each other scary stories until well past midnight. Throughout the night, I felt like I was being watched, but dismissed it as just nerves. Around 1 in the morning, I got up to go pee before heading back to sleep. I'm a very private person, so I went into the forest. Not so far that I couldn't see the light from the fire, but far enough away that I couldn't see beyond the bushes. I did my business and was about to head back, but heard my friend say my name to my right. I thought he was just messing with me, so I shouted back for him to get back into the tents. But he kept beckoning me towards him and away from the camp, which I thought was odd. That's when I noticed the deer in the direction of my friend's voice. It took a moment for me to recognize what I was seeing. When I did, my eyes widened with fear. The deer wasn't a deer. I knew because it was standing on its 2 hind legs. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My mouth was wide open, but the scream wouldn't come out. It was only when this thing, whatever it was, took a step towards me and said,
"Come here. I have something to show you."
in the voice of my friend. I ran back to camp to find neither of my friends were there, where they were supposed to be, and blood everywhere. I looked around and saw my hunting rifle next to where I was sitting and went for it. That's when I noticed the thing had followed me after it stepped out of the forest and into the light. I fired 3 shots at this thing, but it didn't do anything. I knew I hit my mark. I was a pretty good shot. It stepped forward, and I stepped back. I tripped on the log I was sitting on, and as I did, it lunged for me. Next thing I remember, I'm waking up in the hospital with 3 gashes on my chest Apparently, my two friends had found me in the woods after I had wandered off. They spent 3 days looking for me, only to find me back in the camp injured. To this day, none of us know what happened, or even if it did. I just wish I could forget it, but it has haunted me ever since. I just want to say a big mahalo for sticking with me till the end. I hope you enjoyed those stories as much as I did. You never can tell what's truly lying out there
In the dark.
Remember to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I've updated my hardware since my first video, and postings will become more frequent. So make sure you stick around for the next one.